she is only sleeping. I'm sure they thought he was crazy. What? Don't you see? There's a dead body right there. What are you talking about? By this point, we're not surprised at the outcome, though, are we? What does Jesus do? He goes up, takes that cloth off the body, extends his hand, takes her by the hand, and says the words, "Little girl, get up." And what happens? She does. She's received the power of the touch. The touch has again worked wonders. And think again about the fact that touching a deceased person was again a matter of being unclean. But Jesus was there, and she was made well. So what do we make of all this? You could go a lot of different directions thinking about the outcome of this story, but think with me about a few things this morning. First of all, think about the two characters. The two main characters, in addition to Jesus, are Jairus, the man with the sick daughter, and then the woman who had the incurable illness. Each of them had this in common. They apparently knew Jesus was their only hope. They were in a dire circumstance, and they were ready to turn to Jesus. But the way they went about it was quite different. Think about Jairus. He used the direct approach. He looked Jesus in the eye and said, "I need help." That's the kind of approach we prefer, isn't it? When someone is just straight with us, when they tell us what they need, when they come to us, "Help me with this," and we either say yes or we say no. Sometimes, even today, there are people who get to the point in life where they know, this is what I need, and they go take care of it. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't it wonderful when people realize a spiritual need and they come to us? Every now and then as a pastor, doesn't happen real often, but every now and then I will encounter somebody who's really had no interest in the spiritual life, and then all of a sudden they pop up and it's like, okay, I realize what I need. And instead of gradually turning their life around, they just jump right in. I need Jesus. And so they turn to him. But think about the woman. Quite different. She could not afford to go face to face. So she hoped for the smallest of touches. What's the smallest thing I can ask from Jesus? Well, she figured it out. Approach him from behind, and don't talk to him. Don't look him in the eye. Don't bump him. Just reach out and touch the edge of his clothing and hope beyond hope for the power of the touch. She hoped that maybe that would be enough, and she certainly hoped she would never be noticed. Well, she got one of her wishes. She got the power, but she didn't go unnoticed. And I can't help but wonder if there are folks like that today. They would never do like Jairus and approach Jesus face to face. They would never approach the church face to face, but they would love to get a touch of some kind. I think about some of the very big cities of our land and of our world for that matter, where there's a big church or a big cathedral that has people coming in and out of it all day long. Some people are coming as tourists. Some come to take pictures. Some come just to see the beauty, but some come to stop and get a touch. Maybe you've seen those before. There might be tourists with cameras, and over to the side you see someone just seated at a pew or over against a side wall by a candle, maybe lighting a candle, maybe even putting $1 in the slot, or maybe just sitting there contemplating. And I sometimes wonder, are these people who would never show up at a big worship event, but they know they need to touch the hem of the garment, to get close to the power and the presence of God, to hope, even while they watch a candle flicker. Or a more modern example, I think about people who, again, don't show up at religious events, Bible studies, church events, but who check things out online. You know, we do that a lot. There are people who won't go to the doctor, but they go to WebMD. There are people who won't go to a financial advisor, but they get on there and kind of check out, what am I going to do with my money? Well, it happens in faith too. There are people who don't go to a Bible study or speak to a pastor or talk to you about their faith, but there they are late at night, kind of checking things out, maybe watching a video or reading something and pondering. Are these the modern day versions of the woman who just wants to come up and have a touch and not be noticed? And what does Jesus' touch even mean? When we think about Jesus' touch, we naturally think about his touch in our lives. Like the song we sang, Jesus, hold my hand, I need thee every hour. When I kneel in prayer, I hope to meet you there. I guess that's number one, isn't it? When we think about the touch of Jesus, we think about being in prayer, where we can talk to him. He walks with me and he talks with me. Our Catholic friends have a little bit different spirituality, because when they go to Mass, they believe that's as close as you can get to the presence of Jesus. I went to a training event one time in San Antonio where we had roommates, and my roommate was a man who was a lifelong Catholic, and he was from out of town, but every morning, even though we were going to about morning, afternoon, evening sessions of Christian training, he would get up before breakfast and go, because right down the street was a Catholic church that had Mass every morning. So every morning he would adjust his schedule to go to Mass. That didn't make sense to us Protestants, you know. I mean, one a week's good for us. But for him, Jesus was there. If Jesus is a few blocks away, I'm going. I admired, although I didn't fully comprehend, his understanding. But the touch of Jesus. Sometimes we, especially we Protestants, we think about information. You need to understand Jesus. You need to have some basic concepts and be able to figure those out. But these stories in chapter 5 of Mark have nothing to do with learning about Jesus, do they? They have nothing to do with new ideas. It was very literal. It was the literal, physical presence and touch of Jesus. With the little girl, her body was lying there, and Jesus took her by the hand. With the woman, Jesus didn't even see her, but she came up behind him and touched the edge of his garment. So how do we translate that touch to today without turning it into something intellectual? When Jesus was walking the earth, it made sense. Go find him and ask for his touch. But how do we do that today? One clue, and just think about this if you will. One clue is to take seriously what the Bible teaches us about us being the body of Christ. That maybe we can indeed offer that touch. If there are people who need the touch of Jesus today, let's not just hand them a book and say, read about Jesus. Nothing wrong with that. But if they need the touch, perhaps we need to be there physically and offer to them what Christ would offer them 2,000 years ago. We have to take that seriously. What would that look like? What would that look like as a church? What would that look like for you and me if we took seriously that there were folks who felt like outcasts? There have been folks who've been overwhelmed by issues for years and years. There have been folks who need the touch of the Master's hand. What would that look like? May God give us the ability to be able to be people once again offering the touch. Both for those who are up front like Jairus, who say, this is what I need, and also for the many who are a lot more like the woman, who aren't going to look us in the face, but who come up from the side and just ask for the barest touch of the power of Jesus. That's our hope. That's our challenge.